In every Comme des Garçons Homme Plus collection, whether summer or winter, Rei Kawakubo will always prominently feature many pairs of shorts. For many other designers, shorts are just a few sprinkles they'll add onto their summer collections. That's it. But not for Rei. This always boggled me. Why do you need shorts in the dead of winter? So I dug into it. And as it turns out, the answer is way wilder than what I thought. It involves an insane story about how once upon a time, a ragtag mass of hipsters in beanies and wide pants staged a fashion revolution, toppling incumbent kings whom dictated shorts onto their subjects as fashion law. And strangely, this story connects all the way to the core of Rei Kawakubo's vision for Homme Plus. Once you see it, you'll never be able to see Homme Plus collections in the same light ever again. Firstly, let's talk about what is Rei Kawakubo's vision for Comme des Garçons as a whole. If you didn't know, that was the topic of my first video on this channel. I'm not the most proud of that video. I've improved my editing, but most importantly, there was a much simpler way to explain Rei's entire philosophy. Many people see Comme des Garçons as this impenetrable mystery, a cult almost. I mean, how and why would you wear shorts with flaps, fur, and frills? It doesn't help that Rei rarely gives interviews, and when she does, it's like talking to a stone wall. I think that is completely reasonable, actually. You see, Rei has been burned one too many times by Western media. She started her career being given the unfortunate moniker of Hiroshima chic in the 80s. They are still painting a distorted image of her, even today. Rei simply does not trust Western media. But more importantly, I'd suggest that we're looking for answers in the wrong places. Magicians don't explain their magic tricks. Comedians don't explain their punchlines. Artists don't explain their art. If you do, your work has already failed. Rather, let's look at Rei Kawakubo's work itself. What if I told you you didn't need journalists or YouTubers? Because her work is incredibly self-explanatory. Like, she spells it out in big words on a shirt. And guess what? Here it is. Oh wait, it's upside down. There. My energy comes from freedom and a rebellious spirit. Freedom to do what? To wear your freedom. Under this light, it all clicks. The constant drive to create something new, something that hasn't been seen before, as a way for us to wear our own freedom. So the freedom for us to wear whatever we want is actually a pretty modern invention. For a very long time, your profession and social class dictated what you wore. This is especially true in Japan, where you're given a uniform from school all the way to your adult life. One can easily imagine the stereotypical uniform: blazer lapels, center crease trousers, leather shoe, the polar opposite of freedom, the symbol of conformity. Despite that, Rei's output for Homme and Homme Plus has always been centered around this business uniform. As I've talked about in my previous video on Homme, how does that add up to freedom? So, what if I told you this archetypical business uniform actually started off as a symbol for freedom? Nobody likes wearing a stiff suit for work, but let me tell you, it was way worse. Once upon a time in the French court at Versailles, if you wanted to talk to the king, you couldn't just show up in your pajamas. No, you had to wear the habit à la française, a one-piece coat with a gajillion buttons, a skirted waistcoat, all made in fine silk in incredibly peacocky colors, and with embellishments that will put your modern performative male to shame. This set would be rounded off with a pair of shorts, actually called culottes or breeches. I'm not kidding. Proper dress uniform consisted of shorts. As in, if you showed up wearing pants, they wouldn't even let you in. Because pants were the uniform of a peasant, and they will be made in lowly workwear fabrics like, wool and linen, which we now can't afford. So much for progress. And as a respected aristocrat, you were above such wage-slave fabrics like woolen cloths. No, you would wear silk brocade or velvet. You had to show your power, a symbol of the fact that you can afford the luxury known as free time. It wasn't like you refused to wear pants because your favorite influencer didn't like them. No, your favorite influencer, King Louis XVI, literally forbid you. This isn't a matter of fashion, this is the law. Louis XVI must have been smoking something good, because he was not in a position to be playing Barbie dress-up with his subjects. Bread prices were going to the moon like a meme stock. Perhaps people did not invest in cake commodity futures, or perhaps they were sick of wearing shorts. Either way, they impeached Louis's ass. Louis would get demonetized and his blue checkmark taken away by the revolutionary urban proletariat who called themselves, I kid you not, the anti-shorts or sans-culottes. Not many photos, paintings, exist of the sans-culottes, but as the name suggests, from historical records we are sure they did not wear shorts. In fact, their own fashion was a direct refutation of the aristocratic dress that came before. I mean, just look at this freedom fighter. Doesn't he look a lot more modern? Was the trendy wide pants in dark colored wool, a little pretentious scarf, cropped workwear jacket, and a hipster beanie. Capped off was a little 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗽𝗀𝗻𝗄. His uniform became a symbol of freedom. I can already see this dude in your local cafe with his MacBook open, furiously typing into his Substack where every single one of his posts are liberated from capital letters. One of the first things the Wide Pants Liberation Front did was abolish Louis's fashion laws, declaring freedom of dress for everyone. You no longer had to dress according to your class. More importantly, was the outing of the ancien regime. There was no longer a need for bling. You didn't need to dress up in these peacocky, over-embellished habits à la française to show up to court and meet the king, because the king was no more. Clothes were no longer based on class hierarchy. Instead, everyone could equally wear the same uniform. Practical garments made out of practical fabrics like wool and linen in dark colors and wide cuts easy to move around in. No more shorts. Mission accomplished. Freedom for everyone, right? Right? Well, the workwear uniform of the sans-culottes would change men's fashion forever. It kickstarted the Great Male Renunciation, where men will voluntarily give up loud, decorative dress for practical understated clothes in black. Through a series of twists and turns from France to Britain, this will develop into the tailored suit we know today, the same suit worn by every single person in the financial district. The symbol of freedom has turned into a symbol of constraint. I think this is what fascinates Rei, how the suit embodies this duality of conformity and freedom at the same time. If you look at my previous video on Comme des Garçons Homme, I mentioned how for men, Rei always starts with the fundamentals of men's tailoring, the suit. The latest 2026 Spring-Summer Homme Plus collection is named Not Suits, But Suits. I would argue that this has been the idea since the start for Homme Plus. Not Suits But Suits also means Rei is going beyond the suit. Why, you ask? In today's world, where the sans-culottes utilitarian wool is now a stiff business suit, perhaps, maybe, freedom now lies within its antithesis, the aristocratic dress of the ancien regime. If you look at Homme Plus's offerings, you start picking up traces of this everywhere. Traces of the habits à la française, exquisitely decorated and embellished fabrics, loud jewelry befit for a prince, decorative frills on shirts, pants, shorts, jackets, everything. Frock coats with an open front and a long tail. Buttons, lots and lots and lots of buttons. And of course, the most prominent symbol of the aristocracy, one for which an entire opposition front is named after: shorts. Shorts are now a mainstay of Homme Plus collections, spring or fall. Rei likes her shorts a very certain way. I'll show you with the pair I own. It's made out of black tropical wool, a very dressy fabric that you'd find on a suit. For design, you get slash pockets on the front, and in the back, a flap pocket on the left and a welted pocket on the right. By the way, this pocket design, where it looks like it's winking at you, this goes all the way back to the late 70s, to the genesis of Comme des Garçons Homme. The leg opening is super wide, an element taken from Bermuda shorts. One leg is slightly over knee lengths, and the other is almost pants. Perhaps, if I may suggest, it's no coincidence that while these shorts are capable of being paired with a suit jacket and a white shirt, they're often referred to by the community and retailers as culottes. I personally think Rei has been toying with these ideas since the early 2000s, but the first season where I'd say all these click together is Spring-Summer 2016, called Broken Tailoring. Just take a look. Doesn't this look like the habits à la française? was the 𝗔𝘁𝘁𝗁𝗂𝘁𝗁 coat, a skirted waistcoat all topped off with shorts. Except if you look closer, it looks like the 𝗔𝘁𝘁𝗁 is DIY'd out of the garment it's diametrically opposed with, a suit jacket, where the lapel and front closure is dramatically ripped off, leaving a raw edge. Or how about the opposite, a suit jacket but made out of the fabric meant for the aristocracy, and similarly decked out with buttons, but metallic snap buttons. The print is that of a historical landscape, but from afar, the pattern and color is that of camouflage. There's a lot of nuance to how Rei uses these elements. What's key here is that none of these are an appropriation of a historical costume. You'll see bits and pieces chopped up and patched up into something that isn't instantly recognizable. For Homme Plus, you won't ever see King Louis XVI walk out on the runway, and there is a very good reason for it, because Rei would definitely know that the sans-culottes' popular wide pants liberation front's quest for freedom ultimately ended in failure. You could say it was dead on arrival, fizzling out quicker than a meme coin. For one, their fashions weren't actually as free and utilitarian as they claimed. A lot of it was performative. As usual, it devolved into a bunch of signs. One of the first signs to emerge was the tricolor cockade in the colors of the modern French flag. Anyone not wearing one would be seen as a counter-revolutionary saboteur. Imagine being prosecuted because you didn't wear your mandatory labubu on your bag. After they demonetized Louis XVI and locked him out of his accounts, he was no longer king, just citizen Louis Capet. The story goes, as security was escorting him out of the building, someone handed Louis a goddamn tricolor cockade. He refused to wear it. Too bad for him because he didn't get a choice. When he was later thrown into prison, they forced him to wear the red hipster beanie, the bonnet rouge. The situation out on the streets weren't pretty either. If you were wearing clothes that looked too expensive, as in made out of silk, you were in danger of being sent to the guillotine. The newly displaced aristocrats would rush to embroider tricolors and revolutionary slogans on their old clothes, like some cursed streetwear meets Tesla bumper sticker. It got so bad people were carrying around these quote-unquote walking sticks, just in case someone came up to you and asked if you were a intersectional Trotskyist or classical Trotskyist, and they didn't like your answer. And in the end, they elected some midget who created a dictatorship, got the country into a pointless war far away and suffered embarrassing losses. And guess what? If you wanted to meet this emperor, he made you wear silk shorts again. So much for freedom, right? It's incredibly ironic how a movement that overthrew the ancien regime's stiff, class-based fashion didn't actually liberate fashion. No, it just created a bunch of chaos, performativeness, and ended up right back at status quo ante. And somehow, their fashion is now a stiff, class-based uniform today. As the sans-culottes' failure has shown, freedom does not come from symbolic signs. Rebellion by conforming to an opposing set of symbols doesn't create freedom. It just creates a new symbol of conformity, just as repressive as the regime that came before. This is why Rei will not give you on the runway a Louis XVI's cosplay. It has to be more than that. It's fascinating how Rei Kawakubo and 𝗖𝗵𝗽𝗀𝗽𝗀, in their 50+ years at the forefront of fashion, have been fighting against this dynamic. For Yoji, he erases these symbols and signs until there's nothing left but space. I've expanded on this in a previous video that I'm very proud of. Rei takes the opposite approach. For her, it's a permanent revolution. Sans-culottes, ancien regime, punk, British tailoring, all interwoven and clashing and everything all at once. Or like my shorts, you get both Bermuda shorts and capri pants at the same time. A garment that embodies both suit trousers and culottes, but refuses to cleanly fit into either. Like any good art, it refuses to be a sign. Instead, it's a question that you, the wearer, must solve for yourself. But like any good artist, Rei gives a lot of hints. Actually, maybe a bit more than hints. She directly tells you how you should engage with fashion. And just like before, You don't need journalists nor YouTubers to tell you how, because she spells it out with big words on the packaging for a humble pair of socks. It's a bit difficult to read, so let me tell you what it says. Wear your freedom. By now you can hopefully see this is a bit more difficult than expected. How can we wear our freedom? And maybe not end up going down the same path as the sans-culottes. Wear with feeling. It's said that in the early days of Comme des Garçons, they did not have mirrors in their stores. Rei doesn't want you to package yourself into an image. You had to just try it on and see how it felt on yourself. Begin by choosing. If you look at why the sans-culottes failed to create real freedom of dress, it's because there was no room for choice. Before, you were forced to wear shorts. Now you're forced to wear the tricolor cockade. Whether by force of law or by social pressure, freedom cannot come from coercion. It needs to come from choice. Wear your freedom. Wear with feeling. Begin by choosing. To have freedom, we need to have the freedom to feel and choose for ourselves first. Rei says, what someone wears is an expression of oneself. When you're just comfortable with what you're wearing, you don't have new thoughts. I want people to feel something and think about who they are. You can't become truly free if you no longer think about clothes. You need to occasionally wear something strong, and that can feel strange. You need new, powerful clothes to be free and to have new thoughts. Maybe this is why Comme des Garçons is so popular among creatives who create new things for a living. For my video on Comme des Garçons Homme, in the translated interview with Rei I posted on Substack, interestingly, Homme's first loyal customers were artists and film directors. Singer-songwriter Björk, film director John Waters, author and comedian David Sedaris, all die-hard wearers of Comme des Garçons. Particularly for David Sedaris, one item from Comme des Garçons Homme Plus has become part of his signature look.
They're culottes, so they're just like bell-bottom shorts.
People like them. This is going to start a trend.
Maybe it'll start more than a trend. Maybe it'll start a revolution. Anyways, if you're wondering what's the source of this video, the source is I made it up, mostly. This video is original analysis. It's not based on an article or interview someone else did on Comme des Garçons, not like Rei would tell you anyways. This is really the culmination of months of research, so if you found this fascinating, consider becoming a paid subscriber on Substack. Your money buys me time, which lets me make these videos more frequently. That's it, thank you for watching, 𝗵𝗽𝗻 out.